This year I'm doing something a little different when it comes to my reading wrap-ups. Instead of doing them at the end of every month, I'm actually going to be doing them seasonally. So since it is the start of spring, it's time that we say goodbye to our winter read. So I wanted to tell you a little about the books that I've read over the last couple of months. They are books that range across fantasy, romance, lots of middle grade, as well as a thriller. So a little bit of everything over the last couple of months, and I can't wait to tell you about them. So let's dive in. I started the year off with Sarah J. Maas books. I did a whole video on how I was trying to do a Sarah J. Maas blitz in order to get caught up for House of Flame and Shadow releasing. So I was powering through all of her books. If you want to see really detailed thoughts on me reading the rest of the books that I had in the Maas verse, please go check out the vlog. It has a lot more detail and me reading them and having live reactions. So I'll just tell you quickly about them. The first one I read was Kingdom of Ash. This is of course the 7th book in the Throne of Glass series. This is the last book. It is the conclusion to this epic story, and I have to say it did not disappoint. I gave it 5 stars. It was incredible. It was exactly what I needed to wrap up that incredible series, and I just had the best time reading it. It was emotional, it was fun, it was adventurous. There was so much going on, and I feel like every single character got exactly what they needed to get and the conclusion that they deserved, and I had no questions left hanging. This book did the 7-book series so much justice, and that is so hard to pull off. So Sarah J. Maas did an amazing job with this series. It is one of my all-time favorites. I will absolutely be rereading it at some point in the future because there's just no way that I can't. It was so incredible. The hype around these is so worth it, and if you haven't read it yet, you absolutely must. And then I went into House of Sky and Breath. So this is a different series. This is of course part of the Crescent City series, which is the book that came before Flame and Shadow, the one that I was getting ready for. This book, after coming off of Kingdom of Ash, this one was such a letdown. I feel like 95% of the book was not enjoyable for me. It felt like a lot of logistics. It just felt like they were going back and forth. There was not a lot of plot or character development, and the characters' point of views that we did get, I didn't really understand. The last 5% of this book is really incredible, and it picks up on the action. It picks up on the shock factor that Sarah J. Maas does so well. I mean, that last sentence, I cannot even begin to describe to you what that did to me. Even though I had been spoiled for it, it still was really shocking to read about. So yeah, I gave this one, I think 3 stars. Maybe, I think I was teetering between 2 and 3 because I really did not enjoy the majority of it. It was too long, and a lot of it was just unnecessary to set up what she was trying to do for the 3rd book. So this one, a big letdown for me. After I finished those 2 really intense fantasy books, I was like, okay, I'm ready for a romance book, and I don't know why I picked up the romance I picked up, because this one was just as emotionally draining. It's The Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. This is, of course, the same author that wrote Fourth Wing, so I really wanted to give her romance books a try, and I also vlogged this experience if you want to check it out. It was actually a lot of fun to read this book, but I have to say, also very emotionally draining. This one took me on quite a ride. I did annotate it, as you can see, and I had a lot to say because there was a lot going on. This book is told in past present perspective. You have Georgia and Noah in the present, and then in the past you have Scarlett and Jameson. It's 2 different love stories happening at the same time. Georgia in the present, her great-grandmother was Scarlett, whose story is in the past. She's trying to uncover why her great-grandmother never finished writing her very last book, which was about her real life. And in the past chapters, we get the story of Scarlett and Jameson falling in love, who that book is supposed to be about. And you see all of the heartache and tragedies that they went through to be together, and then ultimately what happens with the war and everything. I don't want to share much more than that because I didn't know a ton about it going into it. Let this book surprise you. Let it take you on the journey that it needs to take you on, because it is so worth it. I gave this book hands down a 5 star because I enjoyed every minute I spent reading it, and I just did not want it to end, and that is the sign of a really, really great book. So if you're looking for something very emotional, very layered, a very unique, intricate story, there was also a big plot twist at the end, which I wasn't expecting. This book has everything you need in a good reading experience, so highly, highly recommend this. The next book I have here is Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. This is her new release that came out just a couple of weeks ago, and you guys, Lynn Painter never misses the mark. I have loved every book that I have read of hers. Her characters are always so likable. The story is always so much fun. The banter is like nothing else I've ever seen. It's so fun. The characters are just so funny and really, really relatable as well in so many ways. They're like people you think you would know in your real life. This story in particular is Sophie and Max is actually the person who objected at Sophie's wedding to help her get out of that marriage because her fiance was cheating on her. And so Sophie is really intrigued by this idea because she's also kind of a love cynic. She doesn't really believe in true love. She thinks it's, you know, functional and people can live together, but she doesn't really believe in the idea of like soulmates or anything. And so she's really intrigued by this idea. A couple of months after her wedding, Max gets in touch and asks if she wants to join him at objecting at somebody else's wedding who needs help kind of getting out of a tough situation. And so she agrees, and they do a couple of these weddings. And I just thought it was like such a fun, unique story. I hadn't read a rom-com like that. And Lynn Painter's books are just a good time. Like, you can read them in one sitting. They have that feel-good factor, and even her side characters are a lot of fun. It's just a good time. If you want something lighthearted, something funny, something you can finish really quickly, like in one sitting, then give her books a try, and especially this one. This one I gave 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite a 5 for me, but a lot of my ratings are partly due to like the experience of reading it and how much fun you have reading it. And this book was a ton of fun, and I would highly recommend for the springtime as well, especially. The next book I have here is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This book has made the rounds over the last several years. It's not new in the book community. I finally got around to reading it, and I think that's because they put it on Kindle Unlimited. It was so much easier for me to read on my Kindle, so I was able to power through it, but I do also have the hard copy here. This story is about a girl named Avery who is struggling in life. She's just lost her mom. She doesn't have a lot of money and is kind of living out of her car. And one day she gets a phone call and she is asked to come to Texas, where she realizes that someone has just left her billions of dollars in their will. This is a person she does not know. It is Tobias Hawthorne. He's like this huge businessman that made tons of money, and she has no idea why all that money was left to her and not all of his grandsons and his other family members. And of course the family members are also quite shocked as to why they didn't get the huge payout from his will. And so this story is kind of the ups and downs and twists and turns of the family trying to figure out why she was left the money. She also has no clue, so she's trying to go on this little journey of figuring out what's going on and how this person even knows her and how he might be linked to either her mom or her past life, or, you know, just what connection she has to him. It's very fast paced. The chapters go quickly. They're only like a couple of pages long, so you can just like kind of fly through them. It makes you want to see what happens next because each chapter kind of leaves off on like a weird note. The brothers in this, the Hawthorne brothers, they're also very interesting. So they make you feel intrigued about like what is actually going on behind the family and all the secrets that they have. The only thing I will say about this book, even though it was fun and easy to read, it reads very young. I think this is a YA book. I would have loved this book when I was younger. I think now as an adult, I don't find it as fun to read these types of YA novels. I do think if you are looking for something light and easy with a lot of twists and turns and a very fast-paced story, you will still enjoy this. And to be fair, there are like 2 or 3 other books in this series that I need to read to like really make up my mind on the whole series. But I gave this one, I think, 3.5 stars because, like I said, it was fun, it was easy to read, it kept my interest, but it also wasn't like the most interesting thing I'd ever read, or it wasn't like a life-changing book or anything. So I will give the other books in this series a chance, but I'm like not itching to get to them right away. The next book I have here is called Mixed Up by Gordon Corman. This is a middle grade read that I was reading for middle grade March. This story is about Reef and Theo, 2 boys who live on opposite sides of the town. They don't know each other, they've never met, but something really strange is happening to each of them. They're both starting to lose their memories and then also gaining somebody else's memory. So they've kind of had this like memory swap, but they don't know where these memories are coming from and why this is happening. So they go on a journey to kind of find each other and see if anybody else is experiencing this. And eventually they do find their way to each other and realize that this is happening to both of them. And the rest of the book then is them trying to figure out some sort of cure as to how they can undo this and, you know, get each other's memories back before it's too late. And I thought it was a really cute story. I did like some of the character development that happened. They do talk about some deeper issues as well, like grief and bullying and other topics like that, things that are very topical for middle grade. I just did not love the ending. It felt a little anticlimactic. Like, I didn't think it did justice to the story that had been built up to then, but nonetheless, still a good time, still a fun story, a very short read as well. It took me a couple of days, and I think for a middle grader, this would be a great read, but as an adult reading it, compared to some of the other middle grade I've read, it didn't rank up there with them, so I only gave it 3.5 stars. The next book I have here is also a middle grade, but this time it is a graphic novel called The Love Report by Becca and Maya. And it is about these two sweet little girls named Lola and Grace, and they kind of go on this investigation to learn everything they can about love all around them. And it's about their friends having crushes, it's about different relationships they see, breakups, and all the messy things that come with young love. And I just thought it was really, really cute. But I don't think they did some of the heavier topics any justice. Like, they were introducing some really heavy things like body image and slut shaming and bullying and all those types of really heavy things that teenagers go through. And I'm not sure that the authors really saw them all the way through enough to explain it properly. So for that reason, I had to give it 3 stars. I will say the art style in here is really beautiful. The covers are very vivid and the illustrator did a really great job. So I did enjoy seeing that as far as, you know, a graphic novel is concerned, but the story itself fell a little flat for me. So I don't know, maybe I'll give the second book in the series a chance and see if it develops any more with some of those topics. But for now, I felt very kind of medium about it. The next book I have here is a little novella by Alice Oseman. This is Nick and Charlie. This is a little novella that goes along with the Heartstopper books and series that's on Netflix, which is one of my favorites. I can't say enough good things about that series. It is just so sweet and wholesome and heartwarming. And if you haven't seen it yet, I would highly recommend it. And I was just craving a little bit of Nick and Charlie in my life because I don't think the next season comes out for a while. And I was rewatching the first season and it just made me want to read something in their world. And so I got this little novella. It was cute, but it wasn't anything amazing. I don't think there was enough content in here. I didn't feel like there was enough substance. This one deals with Nick going off to college and what they're going to do about their relationship. And I don't know, it was okay. It wasn't how I felt watching the show. I mean, to a certain degree, it was really nice being back in this world and being with these characters, but it definitely fell a little flat for me, which kind of seems to be the theme for several of these books this month. But yeah, I would say it was very average, 3 stars. I just wish it had a little bit more content and a little bit more going on. The font is huge in this and it's spaced out quite a bit. So I feel like the author just didn't put enough into it. But yeah, it's still worth a read if you like this world and you like these characters and you're just like waiting for the next season and want something extra to read about them. The next book I have here is Swear on This Life by Renee Carlino. She's the same author that wrote Before We Were Strangers. I read that book last year and really loved it. It was the first book I'd read of hers and I really like the way she tells stories. And this one is kind of similar in the sense that it is very emotional. It's told in past, present perspective. It's also a second chance romance just like the other one was. I think that's kind of her thing. She's like a really, you know, she's really into second chance romances, and this one was exactly the same. This one has a lot more like darker themes in it and a lot more trigger points, so I would read those up if you're worried about some of those triggers. But The story is about Emmeline and Jace, and I don't want to tell you too much because with her books, I think I've realized you kind of need to just go into them without knowing much and let the book just take you on the journey it needs to. But in this story, Emmeline and Jace were childhood friends, grew up next door to each other, and then something happened and they didn't see each other for a very long time. And in the present, Emmeline ends up coming across a book and she starts reading it. Everyone's been raving about it that this new author wrote, and she realizes it's the story of her very hard childhood and someone else is telling that story, and she's so shocked by it and doesn't know what's going on because she hasn't heard from Jace in so many years. And the story kind of unfolds from there, and the past chapters are all about their childhood that they had and everything they went through. It's really fun, actually. It's a good story. I did find some of the parts hard to read because there are, you know, so many triggers in it and it is emotional, but I had such a good time reading it. I really like the way Renee Carlino writes. It's very to the point. There's not much like hidden messages or anything. It's just very direct. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Colleen Hoover in that sense, where you can just kind of like fly through the books even though they're like really deep and emotional. I would recommend it. I think I gave this one 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite perfect. There were a few things that didn't sit well with me, but still nonetheless a really good time and very emotional, and also a very kind of unique story as well. The next 2 books I read were on my Kindle Unlimited. I just wanted to read a couple of light-hearted romances. The first one I picked up was The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I'd heard so many good things about this book, and so I just wanted to give it a go. I hadn't read a Catherine Center book before. This one is about Hannah and Jack, and what I love about this one is it's actually reversed. Hannah is the bodyguard. She works for this secret firm that helps like famous celebrities and really high officials stay safe. And in this story, Jack is the movie star and he is going back home to help take care of his sick mom, and he's also kind of fleeing like a stalker situation, and so Hannah is hired to keep him safe while he's there. And they find themselves in this like fake dating situation because they don't want the family to know that he's in danger and that he needs a bodyguard. So they end up in this like fake dating thing, and the family obviously ends up falling in love with her and she ends up falling in love with them, and you can see the two build a relationship as well as they're kind of like forced to spend time together. I did enjoy this story. It was cute. It was fun. I wouldn't say it was anything like earth-shattering and moving and must read. I think the hype was a little bit too much for this book for what it actually was, but I did find it was a good time. I gave it, I think, 3.75 stars, so still worth the read. The other book I read on Kindle Unlimited was called The Love Contract. This is by Sophie Lark, and this one is about Theo and Sullivan, and they also kind of get into a fake dating situation because they both want something from her boss. Her boss is a really well-known businessman, and he has an opportunity that, if it worked out for Theo and Sullivan, could really set them up for life. And so they kind of agreed to fake date in order to get behind the scenes and figure out how to land this opportunity with him. And as Theo kind of moves in and stays with Sullivan and his family and gets attached to the dad, there's like a whole story with the dad behind the scenes. She starts to really develop feelings for him, and he does for her as well, like you do in those fake dating situations. I actually thought this one was very sweet. I enjoyed the backstory of this one as well. It deals with some trigger things, so look those up, like alcoholism and stuff. But the story was very sweet. I don't know if I totally felt their chemistry. It didn't really come off the page as heavy as some of these other romances I've read where you're like instantly bought into the chemistry between the two characters. This one was a little bit harder for me to connect to, so that's why I didn't rank it very high, but it was still a very sweet story to read, very easy. I keep these kind of romances on my Kindle to read right before bed because they're easy and they kind of shut my mind off and help me fall asleep for the night. So if you're just looking for something very lighthearted to take with you to the beach or on an airplane, or if you're going on vacation somewhere, it's a good book for that type of thing. But again, not anything earth-shattering or, you know, gonna change your life completely or anything like that. The last book I wanted to mention in this video is Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I'm actually not done with this book. I have a little bit left, but the reason I wanted to mention it is because it has taken up so much of my time in the past couple of months, and that's because I keep starting it and stopping it and reading other books and then coming back to it. I don't know why I can't just finish reading it. I guess it's because it's just not captivated my attention the way that Divine Rivals did. I love Divine Rivals. I thought it was such a good book. I love the romance aspect of it. And the funny thing is, in Divine Rivals, my critique was that there wasn't enough about the background of the gods and the war. And careful what you wish for, because in this book, the first 60% is all about the background and the war and the gods and all the things. And I'm actually missing a lot of the romance in this book. Roman and Iris's story is so beautiful, and it was so well written in the first one. I love the letters that they were exchanging through the magical typewriters. And in this one, you don't get a lot of that for most of the book. It's just now in the past couple of chapters that it started to pick up a little bit, and I feel a little excited to read it. But for the most part, so far, 60% of this book has been not that interesting to me, and I think that's why it's taken me so long to read. But I'm hoping to finish it in the next couple of days and just be done with it. And I think it's reading very like 3.5, 3.75 stars, unless something really crazy happens, which I'm not expecting it to. This one was definitely not as fun to read for me as Divine Rivals, so I would definitely check out Divine Rivals. Give this one a go still, just to see how the story ends, but I'm just not having as much fun with it. So these are all of the books that I've read over the last couple of months, and I have to say, since I've taken the pressure off of reading a certain number of books every month and cranking through them every week and every day and being stressed about how many pages, I have had such a better time taking all that pressure off. So if you feel like you're in a place where you're just like stressing about how much you're reading and what books you're reading and how many every month, I say just let all of that go and just get back to having fun with reading and making it more of a leisurely fun thing, because ever since I've done that this year, I've definitely enjoyed my reading experience a lot more. And ironically, I'm getting through more books because I'm not putting pressure on myself to hit a certain target every month. So take this as your sign to also let go of all the pressure. It doesn't matter what you read and how much you read. This is supposed to be a good time. It's not a competition. None of us are getting awards for reading a billion books a month. So just have a good time when you do pick up whatever book it is that you are reading at the time. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will catch you next time.